It starts with a basketball game. That's the last normal thing to happen. Five men, friends for most of their lives, piled into a 1969 Mercury Montego. It was February 24th, 1978, a Friday night. They were headed north from their homes in Yuba City and Marysville, California, up to Chico. The UC Davis basketball team was playing Chico State, and the guys were big fans. They were excited. They called themselves the Boys, even though they were men. Their ages ranged from 24 to 32. Their names were Bill Sterling, Jack Madruga, Jackie Huett, Ted Weiher, and Gary Mathias. They were a unit. They did almost everything together. They worked together, they socialized together, and they played basketball together on a team for a local rehabilitation program. 4 of the 5 men had mild intellectual disabilities. Gary Mathias had a psychiatric diagnosis, schizophrenia, but he was high-functioning and managed it with medication. They weren't kids, but in some ways they had a childlike innocence about them. They lived with their parents, they were good sons, they were good friends. Jack Madruga was the driver. He loved that turquoise and white Montego. He was proud of it. His family said he was so careful with it, he wouldn't let anyone else drive it. He even had his mom ride in the back seat once because she'd spilled something on the front seat before. That car was his baby. He was 30. Bill Sterling, 29, was Jack's best friend. He was deeply religious. He would often stop by a library on his way home from his dishwashing job to read about religion. He was a quiet, gentle man. Jackie Huett was the youngest, at 24. He was very close to Ted Weiher. Everyone said you rarely saw one without the other. Ted Weiher was the oldest, at 32. He was a big guy, kind of a gentle giant. He worked as a janitor. He was friendly and always had a smile for people. He once broke his nose saving a kid on a bicycle from getting hit by a car. That was the kind of person he was. Then there was Gary Mathias, 25. He was a little different from the others. He'd served in the army in Germany, but he developed problems with drug use, which led to his schizophrenia diagnosis. After being discharged, he came back home to live with his parents and was getting treatment. He was doing well. He had a job in his stepfather's gardening business. He was part of the group. He was one of the boys. So they went to the game. They watched UC Davis win. After the game, around 10 p.m., they stopped at a little market in Chico. The clerk, a woman named Debbie, remembered them. She said they seemed happy, just a group of guys goofing around. They bought snacks, sodas, candy bars, Hostess pies. Then they got back in the Montego and drove off. That was the last time anyone saw them alive and well. They were supposed to be home that night. When Saturday morning came and none of them had returned, their parents started to worry. This was not like them. They were responsible. They always called. By the evening, the families were frantic. They called the police. The Yuba County Sheriff's Department started looking. The route from Chico back to Yuba City is simple. It's a straight shot south on Highway 99. A drive about 50 miles. It should have taken them an hour, but they never made it. For 3 days, there was nothing. No sign of the men, no sign of the car. The police were baffled. Where could 5 men in a car just disappear? They checked the roads, they talked to friends and family. Nothing. Then, on Tuesday, February 28th, a forest ranger found the car. It wasn't anywhere near Highway 99. It was high up in the mountains of the Plumas National Forest. It was on a dirt road, a logging trail really, about 70 miles away from Chico, in the completely wrong direction. They hadn't gone south, they had gone east, deep into the snow-covered wilderness. The car itself made no sense. It was stuck in a snowdrift, but not badly. A group of 5 healthy men could have easily pushed it out. The keys were gone, but the car was unlocked. One of the windows was rolled down. Inside, the police found the wrappers from the snacks they'd bought in Chico. There were empty milk cartons and soda cans. It looked like they had been snacking in the car after it got stuck. But the most confusing part was the gas tank. It was still a quarter full. More than enough gas to turn around and drive back down the mountain. And the undercarriage of the car had no damage, no dents, no scrapes. Jack Madruga, the careful driver, had navigated that rough mountain road perfectly, right up until the point where he stopped. Why did they abandon a perfectly good working car? Why were they even up there? The road they were on was closed for the winter. It was treacherous and led nowhere they needed to go. Their families were adamant. The boys didn't know anyone up there. They had no reason to be in those mountains, especially not at night, in the middle of winter. Jack Madruga hated the cold. His family said he never went to the mountains. The discovery of the car only deepened the mystery. Now the police had a location, but it was a vast, unforgiving wilderness. A massive search began, but a brutal snowstorm hit that same day. The blizzard dumped feet of snow, burying the area and forcing the search to be called off. It was too dangerous. The families waited. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. The snow in the Sierra Nevada mountains is deep. It doesn't melt until late spring. All winter, the parents held onto a sliver of hope. Maybe the boys had found a cabin. Maybe they were holed up somewhere waiting for the thaw, but as time went on, that hope faded. Finally, in early June, the snow began to melt. The search could resume. But it wasn't a search party that found the first clue. It was a group of motorcyclists out for a weekend ride. On Sunday, June 4th, about 19 miles from where the car was found, the motorcyclists noticed a strange smell coming from a Forest Service trailer. It was a trailer used to house workers during the summer months, but it was locked up for the winter. They looked inside through a broken window. On a bed inside, there was a body. It was Ted Weiher. The trailer was a scene of utter confusion. The police broke in and found Ted's body wrapped in 8 sheets like a shroud. He was on his back. He was emaciated. An autopsy would later show that he had starved to death. He had lost nearly 100 pounds. His feet were badly frostbitten. Based on the length of his beard growth, investigators believed he had been alive in that trailer for as long as 2 to 3 months after they disappeared in February. He had lived for a long, long time, and he had suffered, but here is the strangest part of the entire story. The trailer was stocked with food. In a storage shed right outside, there were dozens of C-ration cans, military-grade meals, enough food to keep 5 men alive for a year. Inside the trailer itself, there were lockers full of dried food beans, potatoes, powdered milk. All they had to do was open the cans, but they had only opened a handful. They had eaten some of it, but most of the vast stockpile was untouched. And there was fuel. A big tank of propane was connected to the trailer. All they needed to do was turn on the valve, and they would have had heat. There were matches and paperback books. They could have easily started a fire in the wood-burning stove to stay warm, but they never did. The stove was unused. Why would a man starve to death in a room full of food? Why would he freeze when heat was available? Ted Weiher was not a small man. He was strong, but he had died a slow, agonizing death, surrounded by everything he needed to survive. A window pane in the trailer was broken. The police figured that's how they got in. But why break a window when there were other ways? The mystery just kept getting worse. The discovery of Ted Weiher's body gave the searchers a new area to focus on. They started combing the woods between the trailer and the car. 2 days later, they found more remains. A few miles from the trailer, searchers found the skeletal remains of Jack Madruga and Bill Sterling. They were on opposite sides of the road. It looked like they had simply collapsed and died from exposure. Madruga's body was partially eaten by animals. He still had the keys to the Montego in his pocket. Sterling was found a short distance away, his bones scattered. The next day, a little further up the mountain, a searcher found a skull. It was Jackie Huett's. His father, who was with the search party, identified it from dental records. The rest of Jackie's bones were found a day later, about 100 yards from the skull. He, too, had died of exposure. He had walked nearly 12 miles from the car before he fell. And so now 4 of the 5 men were accounted for. Ted Weiher had made it to the trailer. The other 3, it seemed, had died trying to get help, succumbing to the cold and the deep snow. They had walked miles through a blizzard, in the dark, wearing only light jackets and street shoes. But what about Gary Mathias? There was no sign of him. They searched the entire area. They used dogs, helicopters, and dozens of people on foot. They found nothing. Gary Mathias had vanished, but they did find his shoes. Back in the Forest Service trailer, where Ted Weiher's body was found, police discovered a pair of tennis shoes. They belonged to Gary Mathias. This was a crucial clue. It meant Gary must have been in that trailer. He must have been with Ted. But the body in the bed was Ted's. Ted was wearing his own leather shoes. So where was Gary? The police theorized that Gary, his own feet too swollen from frostbite to fit into his shoes, had taken Ted's larger shoes and walked out of the trailer, perhaps to try and get help after Ted died. But why would he leave the relative safety of the trailer, and where did he go? His family believed he could have survived. He had his military training, he was resourceful. But as the days of searching turned into weeks, it seemed less and less likely. Gary Mathias was never found. So what happened on that mountain? For over 40 years, families, police, and amateur sleuths have tried to piece it together. There are a few theories, but none of them can explain everything. The first theory is that they simply got lost. Maybe Jack Madruga took a wrong turn in Chico. It was late, they were tired. They might have gotten confused and ended up on the mountain road by mistake. Once the car got stuck, they panicked. They saw lights in the distance, maybe from the town of a ski lodge, and decided to walk towards them, thinking it was closer than it was. Their disabilities might have made it harder for them to reason through the situation. They might not have understood the danger they were in. This theory explains how they got there, but it doesn't explain why they abandoned a working car that they could have easily pushed free. It doesn't explain why they would walk away from the car, their only shelter, into a raging blizzard. And it doesn't explain the trailer. It doesn't explain why they wouldn't use the food and heat that was right there. Then there's the theory that they were chased. This one comes from a man named Joseph Shans. On the night the boys disappeared, Shans was driving up that same mountain road. He was trying to get to his cabin to check on it before the storm hit. His car got stuck in the snow. As he was trying to push it out, he started having a heart attack. He told police that while he was lying in his car in agonizing pain, he saw another car pull up behind him. He saw headlights, he said he saw a group of men, and a woman holding a baby. He called out for help, but they just looked at him and then turned off their headlights. Later, he said he saw flashlight beams and heard whistling, like people calling to each other in the woods. He lay there for hours, cold and terrified. Eventually, he managed to get back in his car, start it, and drive back down the mountain, where he got help. When he first told the story to the police, they didn't take it seriously. He was having a heart attack. He was probably confused. But later, when the boy's car was found just a short distance from where Shans had been stuck, police reconsidered. Could the men he saw have been the Yuba County Five? Could the woman and baby be why they were up there? Maybe they were following someone, or maybe someone was following them. This theory suggests that the boys ran into someone else on that road. Maybe there was a confrontation, maybe they were scared and ran from the car into the woods. It could explain why they abandoned the vehicle so quickly. But it's based on the memory of a man who was experiencing a medical emergency. And police could never find any evidence of anyone else being up there. No other footprints, no other car tracks. And who was the woman with the baby? It's a compelling piece of the puzzle, but it leads to more questions than answers. The third major theory centers on Gary Mathias. Gary was the only one with a history of serious mental illness. His schizophrenia was managed with medication, stelazine, and Cogentin, but his family said he sometimes wouldn't take it. And when he was off his meds, he could become unpredictable. He'd never been violent, but he could get into a state of mind where his judgment was impaired. Could Gary have been having a psychotic episode that night? Maybe he was the one who suggested they drive up the mountain. His family said he had friends in a small town called Forbestown, and the mountain road was one way to get there, though it was a strange and difficult route. Perhaps he was trying to visit a friend and led the others on a bizarre detour. If Gary was not in his right mind, the others might have followed him. They looked up to him. He was a veteran. He was in some ways their leader. If he said, "Let's go this way," they probably would have gone. This could explain the strange decision to go up the mountain. It could also explain some of the bizarre behavior at the trailer. Perhaps Gary's mental state prevented him from thinking clearly enough to access the food or start the heat. Maybe he convinced Ted that they shouldn't. We know Gary was in the trailer with Ted. The shoes prove that. For weeks, maybe months, the two of them were in there together. What happened between them? Did Gary take care of Ted? Did he try to help him? Or did his condition make things worse? The 8 sheets wrapped around Ted's body are a strange detail. It could be seen as a sign of care, of respect, or it could be a ritualistic act performed by someone not thinking clearly. When Ted finally died, Gary was alone. He took Ted's shoes, which were bigger and better for the snow, and left his own behind. He walked out of that trailer and into the wilderness. No one ever saw him again. His family always held out hope that maybe he had survived, that maybe he had started a new life somewhere, but most investigators believe he likely died of exposure somewhere in the vast forest, his body never found. So what is the most likely story? It's probably a combination of all these things. A tragic chain of events where one bad decision led to another. Perhaps they did take a wrong turn, following Gary's suggestion to visit a friend. They drive up the mountain deeper and deeper into the snow. Maybe they see Joseph Shans' car, see his headlights. Maybe in the dark they think it's someone in trouble, or maybe they turn their own car onto a side road to avoid him, and that's where they get stuck. They aren't dressed for the weather, they are cold. They are confused. Their intellectual disabilities might make it hard for them to problem solve. Instead of trying to push the car out, they decide to walk. They think help is closer than it is. 3 of them, Madruga, Sterling, and Huett, head in one direction. They are walking for miles in the deep snow. They are exhausted and freezing. One by one, they collapse and die. 2 of them, Weiher and Mathias, head in another direction. They are the lucky ones. They stumble upon the Forest Service trailer. It's shelter. They break a window and climb inside. They are safe from the storm, but now they are trapped. The snow is deep. They are miles from anywhere. Ted's feet are severely frostbitten. He can't walk. Gary's mental state might be deteriorating. He's off his medication. The stress and trauma of the situation could have triggered an episode. They find some food, but maybe they don't understand how to open the military rations. Maybe they are afraid to use the propane, thinking it might explode. Maybe they try to start a fire and fail. In their confused state, the simple solutions are beyond them, so they huddle in the cold, slowly starving. And Ted lasts for months, a testament to his strength. But eventually his body gives out, and Gary is there with him. He wraps his friend in the sheets, a final act of friendship, or a final act of a troubled mind. Then he takes Ted's shoes and walks out the door, into the snow, and disappears forever. There are still so many unanswered questions. Why did they drive past the turnoff for the ski lodge, a place that was open and full of people, and continue deeper into the wilderness? Whose gold watch was found in the trailer? Police confirmed it didn't belong to any of the 5 men. And what about the woman with the baby that Joseph Sean saw? Was she real? We will probably never know the full truth. The only people who knew exactly what happened that night on the mountain died up there. All we have are fragments, a car on a snowy road, a body in a trailer full of food, and bones scattered in the woods. A pair of tennis shoes left behind. It's a story about a series of small, strange choices that led to an incomprehensible tragedy. It's about a group of friends who went to a basketball game and never came home. It reminds us that sometimes the world doesn't make sense. Sometimes there are no easy answers. There is only the cold, silent mystery of 5 boys who went up a mountain and never came back down. Their story is a ghost story, not of spirits, but of questions that will haunt those woods and us forever.